So this is the shorter note on Nibbana. The opinion has been expressed in the PTS dictionary that Nibbana is not transcendental. If by transcendental is meant mystical, either in the sense of having to do with the supposed divine ground or something to be in the nature of a mystery, then Nibbana, or extinction, is not transcendental. Indeed, it is anti-transcendental. For mystification is a state not of the Arhat, who has realized Nibbana, but of the Patujana, who has not. So we talk about this often, like, mystical kinds of thinking and how that's not correct to do. What exactly is it? Can you clarify what makes a thought or view mystical as opposed to non-mystical or perhaps rational?
Means what we spoke before, means assuming it outside of your experience, which in itself is something you can't even conceive, even as a theory. Which is why it's a contradiction in terms. So mysticism would be the counterpart of the equally external view of scientific projection of the public world. Well, you can either take it in that direction of matter, when you say it's all just electrons and atoms and chemistry and whatnot, or you can take it in the other matter, but from the same point of view of that external to the experience as a whole. You assume there is something outside of it. You assume that you can assume the external. Hence it's mystical. And that usually is pretty much the common thread in any or all of the mystical religions, no matter how different they might be on the particular manifestations of it. As a thread of a view underneath, it's that very thing, assuming the external entity, the external realm, the external, and that's when they say transcendental. That's usually what's meant by it.
Right. Along those same lines, he concludes that paragraph: when a fire becomes extinguished, we do not suppose that it enters a mysterious transcendental state.
Because there is that prominent wrong view of people assuming once the flame extinguishes, it kind of goes further. But see, any notion of further means you're assuming the possibility of a realm outside of this, the five aggregates, the experience as a whole. Yet that assumption is within the five aggregates, the experience as a whole. As the Buddha said, you cannot step outside of it. Whether far, near, up or down, big or small, the five aggregates are there. And if you remember the eons of previous lives, you remember within these five aggregates are one among them. So the notion of external to it, it's already something that's being perceived. As such, it's already something that's thoroughly within the five aggregates. It's one of them. So instead of assuming the extinction of the flame, assuming the projection into some another realm of invisible, no matter how ambiguous, you still perceive it as such, which means it's a gratuitous assumption that you cannot actually experience. So instead of that, it's just the simile of the Nibbana being the extinguishing of the flame means exactly that. Extinguishing of the flame. Absence of fire. Absence of greed, aversion, delusion. Absence of burning flames. That's it. There is no more now where that absence gone or something like that. Has gone.
Later on in the note, he mentions how it can be thought of as transcendental in the sense of being outside the realm of rational investigation or the Patujana.
You transcend greed, aversion, delusion, you transcend ignorance. Yeah, so in that sense it's transcendental within the five aggregates, but you cannot transcend the five aggregates. And why would you? Because as the Buddha said, Upadana is not the five aggregates. So they are not the problem. Desire and lust in regard to five aggregates, the Upadana is there. So you transcending the five aggregates and finding some hidden realm, well, you'll be carrying your Upadana with you. You're trying to get rid of that which is not a problem by mistaking it to be a problem.
He goes on to make some points about the word lokuttara itself. The first one mentioning how there's no particular reason why I am, why I exist, hence one can rationally reason out and escape from it, so to speak. I was more interested in the second part, which reads, I can assert my existence or I can deny it, but in order to do either, I must exist, for it is I myself who assert or deny it. Any attempt I make to abolish my existence tacitly confirms it, for it is
That's
my
what the existential
existence.
philosophers meant when they said the existence precedes the essence. Any essence you might have, it's given on the basis of existence. So you cannot rationalize outside of your existence, because that's in itself, the act of rationalization is something within the existing experience as a whole.
This is from footnote C. He's basically talking about the idea of how people try and find some positive hope in Nibbana somehow, even if the suttas say otherwise. And he says the suttas are less accommodating. See Majjhima Nikaya for an account of the eternalist's unrelieved angst in the face of subjective non-being. Upon hearing the Buddha's teaching of extinction, he apprehends annihilation, despairs, and falls, beating his breast into confusion. But not so the Arya Savaka. So how is it exactly that this person who I guess has this clinging to his views has at the same time understood the Buddha's teaching to the extent where he can
Because
apprehend
it's
it?
within the five aggregates as a whole. It's because it's within the experience. It's not the hidden realm that's been obscured by some veil of ignorance. It is within this experience. So a person can, and there are other suttas where the Buddha said the person thinks, oh, I'm attaining Nibbana, this Nibbana is mine. As in with the wrong view, with the wrong attitude, with appropriation, he's actually having the experience of non-greed, non-aversion, non-delusion. And he recognizes it as the experience of non-greed, non-aversion, non-delusion, but he doesn't enter it, as the Buddha would say, because, well, he's not free from greed, aversion, delusion. But that experience, the experience of absence of greed, aversion, delusion, is a real phenomenon, negative phenomenon, but real as such. So those people would get the hint of that, but they would be terrified because they would see it through the assumption of a degree of being, the degree of positivity that is necessary for their existence. Anything less than positivity that they have assumed, which is upadana-paccaya bhava basically, anything less than that is going to be terrifying. It's going to be bringing anxiety. It's going to bring fear. And that's what I mean by discerning the negative appearing as negative, not trying to make it positive, not trying to overly assume it into positive. You're actually undoing your dependence upon a certain degree of a positivity of a phenomenon. So, in that sense, if there is fear in the face of Nibbana, it's because your assumption of being is being contradicted now. Because you recognize that there are other things lower than the threshold of what you deem to be existence that exist, and they're way out of your control, way out of your comfort zone, way out of anything that you've been conceiving so far, way out of my sense of mind. And that's why it just results in an instant dread. So Nibbana really, it's where death is for a Putujana. If a Putujana, that's why they would jump into conclusion, that will kill us, that will destroy us. Because for Putujana, death is that direction of not mine, annihilation, out of my control. That's going to affect this life within these five aggregates. So really, that's why mindfulness of death is one of the quickest ways of becoming an arahant, but obviously it can be a bit risky as well.
Later in the note, there's a quote from the Udana. Reads, there is, monks, the non-born, non-become, non-made, non-determined. For if there were not that non-born, non-become, non-made, non-determined, an escape here from born, become, made, determined would not be manifest. And also from the Asankata Samyutta, the destruction, monks, of lust, hate, delusion. This, monks, is called the non-determined. And it seems that whenever we talk about Nibbana, it's always kind of given in these negative terms, like an absence, a non-something. So is there some positive thing we can think of as Nibbana, or is it exactly
Well, that absence is positive. Positive in its absence. Absence, it's a manifested phenomenon, and as such, from that point of view, it is a positive thing. But not a positive thing in a sense of becoming an object of your senses, for example, which is usually what people regard as a positive thing. That's why I mean, you need to learn how to allow things, thoughts, feelings, perceptions to endure. Not just fall into kind of explaining them and or trying to get rid of them or sort of rationalize them. By allowing things to endure, you see them that they exist on their own accord. They persist on their own accord. And by being able to do that, you will see that absences persist on their own accord. Negative presence persists on its own accord. And as such, it's something, the negative aspect is basically what definition of consciousness is, the ultimate negative. So that's why the negative, in its most general, whether it's a negative particular thing or more general thing, a negative is there, which means the aggregate of consciousness is there. So that's why Nibbana would equate to the extinguishing of that indications caused by consciousness, the non-indicative consciousness, as Nanavira translated it. So in that sense, negative exists as negative. But people usually associate or conflate existence with a positive, or with the degrees of positive, which is the degrees of bhava, basically. So undoing the bhava clarifies the correct way of appearing negative, the positive aspects of negative. So that's why Nibbana is Dhamma, but it's the asankata Dhamma. It's the Dhamma that you experience through extinguishing determinations of greed, aversion, delusion. So the absence of that which used to be a burning fire is a real experience.
He says, but if in our stewing minds we still cannot help feeling that Nibbana really ought somehow be some eternity of positive enjoyment, or at least of experience, we may ponder these two sutta passages. First one says, there are, monk, these three feelings stated by me: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neither unpleasant nor pleasant feeling. These three feelings have been stated by me. But this, monk, has been stated by me: whatever is felt counts as unpleasure, suffering. That, however, monk, was said by me concerning the impermanence of determinations. And then the Venerable Sariputta said this: it is extinction, friends, that is pleasant. It is extinction, friend, that is pleasant. And this was said, the Venerable Udayi said to the Venerable Sariputta, but what herein is pleasant, friend Sariputta, since herein there is nothing felt? Just this is pleasant, friend, and herein there is nothing felt. So, these two suttas seem to be trying to point at the idea of what Nibbana is in regards to feelings.
Well, the first bit talks about from the point of view of Putujana. The other one talks from the point of view of an Arahant. So from a point of view of Putujana, who still has craving in regard to pleasure, craving in regard to avoiding pain, that in order to overcome that, he needs to regard any arising of feeling as affected by craving, any arising of feeling as a problem, any arising of feeling as arising of suffering. When there is a problem, there is suffering. So that's why whatever it's felt counts as unpleasurable. Because with that kind of attitude, he will then withdraw the notion of ownership of his own feelings and the notion of ownership of control. That's why the impermanence of the determinations. The determination for craving is the feeling. So seeing that these feelings are anicca, they cannot be owned, will then result in fading away of craving. From the point of view of Arahant, the fact that none of the feelings can affect him, and he has fully understood that and fully experienced it and fully verified it, that in itself is very pleasant. The fact that he doesn't feel anything, it is very agreeable.